if you're here, it means that you want to learn how to work with the Twitch API using Node.js. And I mean, who wouldn't, right? It's really cool. Games are cool and coding's cool. So let's hop right into it. So one of the first things you need to do is you need to go and get a client ID and a client secret from Twitch. So you need to go in and sign up for their Twitch developers account. So you just type in like Twitch dev, go there, sign up, get your stuff. They'll ask you to create an app. Just create an app and get the stuff that you need. And so once you do that, then you're going to be ready to start coding. So one of the first things that we want to do is open up PowerShell here, and we want to make a directory. And so you're just going to type in mkdir or make directory, okay? And then give it a name. And so we'll call this like YouTube node. So let's create our directory. Next thing you want to do is cd into that. Okay, and so inside of here, you want to make sure that you install and all your modules that you're going to need. Create your server.js and go ahead and open up all of that inside of code, VS Code. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to say echo like this, and we're going to create a file called server.js and just give it the default. And so that's going to create it. Then you're going to do npm init. This is going to initialize the node package manager. Just go ahead and hit enter for everything. It doesn't matter. Okay, at the end, type yes. Great. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're going to install, this is the dot environment. So it's npm install.env. And we also, I believe that's all the packages we need for this. So you can just type in code dot, and it should open it up in Visual Studio Code, as you can see here. So make sure that you've got Visual Studio Code installed. All right, so here we are. Here's our server.js. And what we want to do is we first want to initialize or require the packages. So the first package that we're going to require is we're just going to type in require. This is for our .env. And what env is, it's environment variables so that we can, well, mostly so that I don't have to show my client secret and stuff like that. So we're going to say require, and it wants to do intelligence there. So require.env .config like this. So that's going to require that. And then we also want to require requests. So we're going to type in const request is equal to require, and then you just type in request like that. So this has got our requires out of the way, and now we can get into some of the coding. And so you're going to want to go ahead and set up your .env file. So go ahead over here, do new file, and just call it .env, and this is your environment variables. And in here you can create stuff. We'll say like client underscore ID. We'll do client underscore secret, and then you can actually do like URL. So you can do like the get token, because you will need an OAuth token, and you can do like get games, and that's what we're going to use for this one. These are going to be the URLs. So let me put these in here, and then I will be right back, and we'll go ahead. Function, and this function is going to be a post request to Twitch so that we can get an access token or an OAuth token that will be used to make other calls. And so you go ahead and you're going to type const, and I'm just going to call this one get token. That's the name of the function. Hit equals, and then we're going to give it two parameters, which are going to be the URL, and then we're going to do callback so that we have a callback function. Okay, type it in like so. All right, and so inside of here, the first thing we're going to do inside this is we're going to create what's called const options, and this is what we're going to pass to the post request. And so we're going to do URL, and this is really where the environments come in handy. So you can type URL and then process get token. And so that is the actual get token URL. Okay, we're going to tell it JSON truth. This way it goes ahead and parses it into JSON. And then for this request, you've got to create the body. And so after body, give it some curly braces. And inside of here is where you're going to need to put your client underscore ID. And so we're going to go ahead and set this to the process env for client ID. And then you're going to need your client secret. So like this, client secret, and set it to process.env.client_secret. And then lastly, inside of this body, you're going to need to put grant type. You do have to put this in there, and it is client_credentials. This is required. So go ahead, go down here, make sure you get all of your stuff nice and pretty. And now we're actually going to do the request. So you just type in request.post. Okay, and inside of here, and then you got to do some braces. Inside here, you're going to type in options. So these are the options that we just created. Hit it with a comma. Use a couple other braces here. And we're going to put error for error, res for response, and body for the body of the response. And you're going to do equal like this. Give it some curly braces. And inside of here, we're going to say if. So this is an if statement. Error. We want to know why we're getting an error. So we're going to say return console.log error for funsies. And then after that, so if it errors out, it'll give us an error or a reason. We're just going to say console.log. Inside of this, we're going to say status. And then that, okay. And then we're going to say res.statuscode. So this is actually going to give us our status code. So like a 401, 404. It makes it easier to troubleshoot. And then we're going to say console.log, and we want to see the body of this request. We want to see the body that's returned to us. And then for our callback, which we'll use later, just go ahead and type in callback res. So that'll be our callback response. Make sure that you've got all of your syntax correct here. And so this is actually going to this is the function that we're going to use to make the request to get our OAuth. And so now we need to have a request to where, a function so that we can actually use it. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually call, we're not going to make another function. We're going to call this function. So we're just going to say get token. Okay. Set it up here. And then we need to call the process.getEnv process.env get underscore token. So this is that URL that we're wanting. And then after that, you're going to go ahead and hit you a comma here, create another set of braces. This is so that you can actually use the callback function. Go ahead, set it up like that. We also have some curly braces that we need here. Make it look nice and pretty. And so in here, what we need to do is we are actually just going to, we're just going to console.log the res so that we can see what it looks like. So now switch over to PowerShell, and we're actually going to run this. And so you're just going to say node server.js, and then it's like, hey, you got an error, and it's like, why? And it's like, cannot find the module request. So apparently we forgot to install it. So just say npm install request, and this will fix it. All right, so now everything's installed. So now we can actually do node server.js. And as you can see here, we are getting a response. And this is the entire response that we're getting. This has a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of stuff that we don't need. So what we need to do is we need to go back over and figure out how we're going to get it to where we just get what it is that we're looking for. And so we can actually say res.body in here, inside of this console.log here. We can say res.body, and this is actually going to give us the body of the return. And so if we go in here, you can see it's a lot less here. And so it actually gives us the access token. And if you'll notice in my code, if you notice in my code, I've actually got this already going up here. So if there's nothing happening inside this get token right here, if there's nothing happening in it, we're actually going to see that already. And so you can actually see what the access token is, the status code, and everything like that. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code here, we want to make sure that we're actually using this. And so what we want to do is we're going to initialize a variable outside of this function. And I'm just going to call it AT. I'm going to put it equal to nothing at this current moment. And so inside of the get token function, we're actually going to set AT equal to, and we're going to say res.body.access token. Like that. And so that is going to set the AT variable equal to what we need it to be equal to, which is the access token. And we're actually going to return it. So we're just going to say return AT. Okay, so if I go out here and I say console.log, I'm actually going to set a timeout on this, and we'll talk about this timeout here in a minute. So I'm going to set a timeout here on this so that it doesn't go before our other stuff. So we're going to set a timeout, and what we're going to do is we're going to say console.log AT like that, and then we got to give it a timer. We're going to say 1000, which will be equal to 1000, which is equal to 1 second. So do not forget your curly braces here, which you have to have. It's bad coding on my part. So now we're going to go in and run it again. Okay, and as you can see, it waited 1 second. And now down here, we can see that our variable has been given the access token. So let's go back over here, and we're actually going to take this out because we don't need this, but it was a way to see it. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up our function so that we can get the top games list. And so for this, we're going to just call it, we're just going to say constant, and we're going to call it get games equal to, and then inside here we've got to enter some parameters. So we're going to say URL. This is going to pass the URL. We've actually got to pass that access token that we just created, and then we're also going to give it a callback in case we want to do anything with it later. Okay, so inside here we also need options. So we're going to say const for constant, and we're going to call these game options. This, you do need this for your request. This one is smaller than the other one, so we're going to say URL, and we can say process.env.get_games, and this is the get games URL that's given in the Twitch API documentation that we've also put in our environmental variables. And we're going to give the method of get, and then we need headers. So for this one, we actually need headers instead of body. And for our headers, we're going to give it client dash ID, like so. And this is going to be equal to the process.environment.client ID that we used earlier. And then we need a header for authorization. And so for authorization, It needs to be like that. And then inside of here, you're going to say bearer, like this, like bearer. And you want to give it a space before your last apostrophe, I guess, or your single quote. And you're going to space access token. Okay, go down here. And so that's the options that we need for this. And now we're going to say request.get. And this is a get request as to opposed to having a post request. And so you're going to say request.get, and you're going to pass in the parameters game options. You're going to give it a comma. And inside here for the callback function, you're going to say air res and body. Give it a space here, make it look nice and clean. Boom, put in some curly braces. And so inside of here, we're going to give it another, error here. So if error, we want to know the error. So console dot return console dot log error. We want to see if there's any errors, and we do get that if there's any issue. And now we want to say console dot log. And we're going to put in some stuff so that, like we did earlier, so that we can make sure that we're doing some troubleshooting if we have any issues. And that's going to be the status, because we want to see what that status is going to be, that status code. It could be like you got an invalid OAuth token, or the OAuth token is missing. There's a lot of different things it can be, and we want to make sure that we have that. And so it's just going to be res.status code again. Okay, like so. And then we're going to say console.log. And inside this, we're going to say json.parse. And we're going to say body. And this body is going to refer to the body that we got earlier. Okay, make sure you got everything ready to rock and roll. Okay, and then down here, we're going to do, this is where that set timeout comes in handy. We're going to say set timeout. And what this does is, if you're not familiar with Node, is that Node wants to run everything all at once. And so this is actually telling the system, wait a little bit and then run it. And this is to make sure that we have everything initialized. So go ahead and do your set timeout like this, put you in some good stuff here. And inside of here, we're just going to say, we're going to call the get games function. And then we're going to type in process.env.getGames. That's our get games variable. And we're going to say AT, or get games URL. Hit AT, that's our access token variable. And then we need to do the response. This is for the callback here, in case we want to use it later. And inside of here, we're not actually going to do anything. And then go down here, hit a comma, and put it down to 1000. That's for 1 second. And so this is actually going to output the games inside of a JSON. Now, if you noticed earlier, I didn't use json.parse when we were initially looking at the body or the response from our first request. The reason for that is because I put JSON is pretty much equal to true right here. For this one though, I didn't, and so I just used json.parse to parse that body. So make sure you got everything saved, and let's go ahead and run it, and we should see a list of games. And then there we go. So we can see right now that the #1 game is Just Chatting. Second is League of Legends. Maybe they're doing Worlds at this point. I don't know. Mafia is #3, which is kind of weird. Dota, Among Us, Grand Theft Auto is still pretty high. These are kind of... This is funny. But anyway, that's the top games. And so now that you've done this, you can actually, take this data and put it into like if you want to do a web app using Express, if you wanted to create a mobile application using React Native, you can do this with a lot. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been really fun to learn to work with the Twitch API, to actually get back into coding. And I hope you have found this valuable and that you'll stick around for some more coding that's going to probably happen hopefully in this soon. Thanks for watching.